Hi, I'm JP, and this is Crash Course Development
It's Ian.
Studies.
We're going to be talking
Colonialism.
today
Focusing on
in Africa. In terms of Africa, colonialism had many positive and negative effects. Negatives: destruction of local environment and resources, massive social disintegration, political borders that serve their own needs rather than reflecting the historical and territorial divisions of the people who lived there.
On the flip side of this,
The establishment of colonial rule justified the means of getting there, however disruptive socially and ecologically the process may have been. African economies expanded greatly due to the increase in demand of African goods on the international market. Sanitation improved greatly, and the life expectancy rate rose. Some of the long-term negative effects of colonialization
focusing on
in Africa were Europeans taking over Africa's natural mineral wealth and caused a scarcity of the mineral wealth in Africa. This deprives countries of Africa of its natural minerals. Ethnically fragmented countries prone to civil war. There was no way for Africa to develop and compete with the rest of the world
during this time.
due to the rivalries between European nations in Africa.
The effects of colonialism. So, where do we start? I suppose we should start with colonialism's dubious historical past, to really drill down to the heart of the matter. So let's break this down into sections. Let's start with European expansion into colonial Africa, and let's talk about how that trade developed into the full-blown slave trade. Why, you say, should we be talking about this? Well, let's look at a short history video.
The scramble for Africa. Colonization was motivated by the European hunger for African resources. The subsequent exploitation of the African people and the uprooting of their spiritual values by Christian missionaries would leave a permanent European stamp on the continent.
So let's talk colonial rule and how that affected its colonial masters, and how it also affected its colonial subjects. Why do we have colonialism?
The mindset is the barbarians are backward and inferior, and for their own benefit we have to uplift them and civilize them and educate them and so on. The psychology behind it is kind of transparent. I mean, when you've got your boot on someone's neck and you're crushing them, you can't say to yourself, I'm a son of a bitch and I'm doing it for my own benefit. So what you have to do is figure out some way of saying I'm doing it for their benefit. And that's a very natural position to take when you're beating somebody with a club.
Britain cut the largest piece of African cake from Cairo to Cape Town, in addition to Nigeria and a few West African regions. It was also the British Empire that in 1894 imposed an arbitrary boundary around the many diverse ethnic groups and kingdoms that would make up Uganda. The southern Bantu-speaking people were given economic, political, and educational advantage. The northern ethnic groups, two in particular, the Acholi and the Langi, were the main recruits for military and police positions. By exploiting linguistic, ethnic, and cultural differences between the peoples of the North and South, Britain's divide and rule policies created a tension between them that helped maintain British rule. The French took an east-west slice of the continent as well as Madagascar. The Belgians took Rwanda, Burundi, and the Congo in what Joseph Conrad called the vilest scramble for loot that ever disfigured the history of human conscience. Slave labor took over 5 million lives. In Rwanda, Belgium entrenched the idea of the Hutu as a workforce and the Tutsi as extenders of Belgian rule. The politicization of these two cultures would profoundly contribute to the genocide of 1994. In Sudan, the British ruled the Arabs in the north and the blacks in the south as separate colonies, only to combine the areas before independence in 1956. The result has been relentless civil war, the Darfur massacres being the latest tragedy. The Portuguese decimated Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau well into the 1970s. The Italians took Libya, Eritrea, and Somalia. The Germans added Cameroon and Tanzania and committed the first genocide of the 20th century, against the Herero people.
No colonial power is going to succeed unless it's going to play on existing divisions and sharpen them, increase them, exacerbate them. So one of the first questions after the end of colonialism is who belongs and who doesn't. Who was part of the colonial struggle and who betrayed. And this is time to settle scores.
For me, colonialism is a story of improving one society's political and economic outlook at the peril of another's. Africa lost control of its land and independence. Traditional African cultures were broken and fragmented. The division of Africa was the most harmful in terms of territorial boundaries. Africa was broken into colonies with rival tribes, and many civil wars broke out as a result.